had killed the market for, of course. So now this had killed the market for, of course.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, watching me here on Black Fire Network. My name is INNOSSETU. Together, Maria is going to join me soon. Let me hope your weekend was so nice. We are very sorry. Yesterday, we weren't able to be here because of rain. Like it rained the entire day, and of course, we weren't able to make it yesterday. Electricity, it started when it was on and off. When it came to our working time, it was totally off. But let me hope you're doing good there. Let me hope you're doing good. Let me hope everything is moving on well. Yeah, let me hope everything is moving on well where you are right about now. Yeah, today is a Tuesday, and if you're watching me from of course Facebook is down even up to now. Our Facebook is down, but if you're watching me from Twitter and YouTube, I welcome you to the show. And if you're watching me for the first time, please endeavor to subscribe to this YouTube channel. It is always important for you to subscribe, because when you subscribe, actually whenever we are coming in for shows, let it be here on Black Fire Network Live or other of course Black Fire Network channels, Black Fire Network, and the other channels. Whenever shows are coming in, whether me or my colleagues, we are already we come in, of course, and and you're notified on your phone, on your laptop. Thierry says that they are happy, aren't they? All European. Thierry. Aren't they all European? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know theory. I don't know. I don't know. But I don't think they are all Europeans. I don't think. I don't think they are all Europeans. Yeah. But let me hope Thierry, you're doing good and you're fine. Yeah. Today's topic is of course about Miss South Africa controversy. Uh, there is something that was caught in the recent 5 days back that was of course surfacing social media and of course the entire South Africa and of course Nigeria. The issue of the Miss South Africa that happened. This was of course so controversial. This was so controversial to the extent that, of course, Miss Chidimma, a 23-year-old, ended up, of course, uh, uh, moving out of the contest of Miss South Africa because of the pressure the South Africans were putting on her. We see that the 2024 Miss South African pageant has been surrounded by controversy primarily due to the withdrawal of the contestant Chidimma, Chidimma, who has a Nigerian father and a South African mother. So first intense scrutiny and of course xenophobic backlash regarding her nationality and of course eligibility. So the South African Ministry of Home Affairs launched an investigation into her citizenship, which led to her discussion to withdraw from the competition for her family safety. So despite of this, we see that the pageant also made history by crowning Maya the first deaf winner of the Miss South Africa. So this is something that, of course, that actually we once had a full topic here on Black Fire Network about the xenophobia that is going on in South Africa. To me, xenophobia is a crime. Is a crime. South Africans, there are things that they are looking up upon. Actually, I'm looking at these black South Africans, the native, of course, South Africans in South Africa. These are the people that are steaming up fire on this. I've not seen so many whites. I've not seen very many, of course, coloreds, Indians, Chinese coming out, of course, to have a say on this. But it is these native South Africans, the black South Africans, that of course that are steering up this xenophobia in, of course, in South Africa. This is a crime. This is a crime. So, one of actual of the main issues involved in Chidimma's contestant, uh, of course, a contestant of Nigerian and Mozambican descent. There are a lot of things that have been said about this girl, but it has been confirmed that her mother is a South African by birth, is a South African, is a native South African. Her parents stuff, but um but the father of of this girl, the 23-year Chidimma, the Miss South African contestant, is a Nigerian. So a lot, a lot is happening in this. A lot is happening in this, but we see that this girl, of course, withdrew from this contesting. And of course, the withdrawal of the contestant from the South African pageant has highlighted the complex dynamics of identity, race, and immigration in South Africa. So 30 years after, of course, the end of racist apartheid, we see that the participation of Chidimma, a 2023 year in the national, of course, beauty, of course, pageant, sparkled controversy in South Africa as soon as it was revealed that the father is a Nigerian and her mother has her roots in Mozambique. So some South Africans argued that she should not represent the country internationally, since the rules of the contest state that the contestants must have South African citizenship. So that entails being born in South Africa and at least one parent being either a South African citizen or a permanent resident. So a lot of insults have been made on this girl, as very many people in South Africa, like I said, the native South Africans, they are referring to this girl as a derogatory name for foreigners, which is called the Makwerere. So began to appear on social media. So the xenophobia was exacerbated when rumors began to circulate that, of course, Chidimma's mother had false documentations, prompting the Patriotic Alliance of the party led by the Culture Ministry, that is Guyton McKenzie, to announce that it will take legal actions against her. So the South African Ministry of Home Affairs launched an investigation, like I said earlier, at the request of the Miss South African or South Africa organizers to verify the nationality of Chidimma, and promptly reported that the prima facie reasons exist to believe that Chidimma's mother has committed offenses of fraud and identity, of course, theft. So complicating the model's legal situation. So shortly after, the model announced on his Instagram that she was pulling out the Miss South Africa pageant after much careful consideration. That is the post that was on Instagram. I've made the difficult decision to withdraw myself from the competition for the safety and well-being of my family and I. That was, of course, the statement of her the late last week. So the controversy over, of course, Chidimma's nationality has shown a spotlight on the latent racism towards dark-skinned South Africans from elsewhere in the country, where the white population is around just 7%. So Chidimma broke her silence on the issue when she gave an interview to the South African media site, that is Sowetan Live, in mid-July, where he said that I just feel that all of this is black on black hate, as I am not the only one in this competition, of course, who has a surname that is not a South African. So I just feel like the attention is on me because of my skin color. So, which I think is a disadvantage. Is a disadvantage. It is also being something, of course, I had to overcome when I was growing up. So, why could we be seeing, of course, why is it that we see that blacks in South Africa? These are the people that are spreading xenophobia. These are the people that are causing, of course, racism in South Africa. It is crazy for real. It is crazy and unbelievable. It is so crazy and unbelievable. So, guys, allow me share this short video. Um, Allow me share it here so that you can also, of course,
Well, Miss South Africa contestant Chidimma Vanessa Onwe has become a topic of hot debate in the country. Some netizens are calling for her to be removed from the pageant after she disclosed that her father was Nigerian and her mother South African with roots in Mozambique. Her participation in the pageant has been embroiled with both support and criticism. This also sheds light to the country's deep-rooted history of xenophobic violence and discrimination, mainly towards African immigrants. The pageant organizers have confirmed that the 23-year-old has met all criteria and she is eligible to contest the beauty pageant. However, the cries are getting louder to have her removed, citing she is a foreigner and not a South African. Prominent politicians were also involved in the discussion. The recent remarks made a minister of Sports, Arts and Culture has also added further controversy. Political party EFF and Action SA leader Herman Mashaba have also weighed in on the matter. For the very latest on this, our correspondent Calden Ongu sent us this report.
Adichina's incident has brought back xenophobia debate in the country. For the past couple of days, there has been heated debate on social media platform on whether Adichina should be allowed to continue to participate for Miss South Africa or not. Some South Africans claim she is a Nigerian and she should be disqualified from the pageant immediately. Others have supported her, saying her mother is a South African and that makes her South African too. Political party Economic Freedom Fighters issued a statement condemning Afrophobic attacks on Adichina. The party says previous contestants of white and Asian descent did not face such scrutiny, so why should a black South African face such? Adichina herself has remained resilient, expressing her determination to use her platform to educate and unite people. This is Calden Ongu from Johannesburg, South Africa, for We On, World is One.
So, of course, that is of course about her. But we see that the attacks on Chidimma, of course, did not originate from questions about the eligibility as a citizen, but on her appearance, her allegedly foreignness, the ethnicity of her parents says, of course, that very many people, of course, say and of course stresses that the racial aspect of this controversy, there is still an apartheid mentality whereby blackness is, of course, thought to be ugly, inferior, and bad. Even black people have assumed this way of thinking. So, Chidimma is in the spotlight because of the color of her skin. So, in the beauty pageant, people who have been, of course, conditioned to think their own skin is ugly are outraged. So, so of course, for me, I dare this one, of course, have much self-confidence. The girl had much confidence. This is actually, it is the same reason why very many native South Africans or black South Africans, these are the poorest people in South Africa. These are people that have failed to elevate themselves. Because of that, they have in their mind that black people, they can't do anything for themselves. Like black people, all good things, they are for these other races in South Africa, the Asians, the coloreds, the whites, and of course other races in South Africa, Chinese stuff, rather than the black people. When you look at the black people in South Africa, this is the majority group in South Africa. But these are the people that are going through a lot in South Africa. Reason why they don't have confidence over their identity. They can't identify themselves. They have been indoctrinated to hate, of course, their brothers and sisters. This is South Africa. They have been made to hate. So we see that South Africa is experiencing growing hostility towards immigrants. There are, of course, 2.4 million in the country of 60 million, of course, inhabitants, although unofficial figures are probably higher. This is especially the case of if these migrants are non-white, other African nationals are being used as, of course, scapegoats for difficulties, for the difficulties the country is experiencing. So, in South Africa, one of the most unequal, of course, countries in the world, 32.6% of the citizens are unemployed. Like I said, 32. Let me repeat. In South Africa, one of the most unequal countries in the world, 32.6% of the citizens in South Africa, they are unemployed. So this does not, of course, include those who have stopped looking for work, which of course pumps the rate up to 44, of course, 0.1%, and 80% of the people survive on only 8% of the resources. The rich hoard the land and no social mobility is possible. So as Black Africans, we fight among ourselves for scarce resources, and that ends up, of course, producing frustration. So South Africa today has experienced a surge in xenophobia in the recent years, with incidents often involving members of the so-called Operation Dudura, a violent group that assaults business owned by foreign nationals. The number of foreigners living in South Africa has more than doubled since 1996. And when there was just 1 million registered foreigners, of course, we see that racism that rises its head from time to time in South Africa. And of course, we see that, of course, people like Ayanda, this is a political analyst, at 17, she was questioned in the streets by the police who asked her in Zulu how to say elbow, of course, to see if she knew the word. So a common technique to identify foreigners within South Africa. So there is a deep-seated Afrophobia, a certain hatred of other people who are also black, but not South African. So that seems to be connected to a certain sense of superiority because the country has infrastructure that others don't have. So this has built a certain perception that migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers are coming to take resources from the South Africans. This is just a perception. This is just a mindset. So we see that of course, I also blame actually social media for fueling hate speech. As the use of social networks increases, there is growing misinformation in the national languages, not just English. And this, of course, information ends up to sites that are harder to monitor, such as WhatsApp groups. So, Chidimma's exit from the beauty contest appears to be a win to those who gave free rein to the xenophobia against her, such as of course, the Twitter user who wrote, "Nigerians are terrible citizens in any country." Can you imagine? And they always end up proving us right. So, xenophobes, of course, will feel justified, and cause narrow-minded nationalism will seem stronger. So, racist country, of course, we see that. Voices of hate end up being heard more clearly than voices of love, voices of unity. So we see that hatred against, of course, Chidimma and, of course, immigrants. We see that very many people on social media, like a young TikToker user said, "I want to tell all Africans that we are not all like this in South Africa last week." So after South Africa's Home Affairs Ministry announced the investigation into the matter of the young woman's nationality, Chidimma, the 23-year-old, this user added that, "Are you happy now that you have ruined the girl's life? Is this going to bring more jobs in South Africa, more land? Is this going to make your communities safer?" We know South Africa is going through a lot. Like Black South Africans, they are going through a lot. But of course, steering up such issues in South Africa or among the Blacks in South Africa, is this a move? Should we say that this is a move for Blacks to get employed? Like I said, 32% of the people in South Africa, they're unemployed. So creating xenophobia, attacking your fellow Blacks, actually they call them foreigners in South Africa. Is this going to bring land, more land? The land was that is occupied by the whites in South Africa. Is it going to create jobs for you? So at a time when hate speech is not good. Let me say that. At a time when hate speech is not good, because it ends up into a lot of issues. But we see that international migration in South Africa, particularly as it relates to labor market, is a highly contentious topic. We see that the undersigned migration scholars want to share relevant information about this important topic. And we see that when we talk about xenophobia in South Africa, of course, this is an issue. And when it comes to students, it is worse. When it comes to foreign students or students from other African countries, it becomes worse. And actually, the thing that was, of course, shown by this young woman, Chidimma, during contests, it is the same thing that is happening on job markets. When you're asking for a job, you want to work on a certain TV in South Africa, you want to become a celebrity, like this is the same things that happen in South Africa. Let them be job opportunities. Let them be anything in South Africa. Health issues, you're going to a hospital, they will first clarify. There is a political analyst actually who said that when she was growing up, the policemen used to ask her to say elbow in Zulu language to see whether she can speak the South African language. So I've not had very many, of course, I've not had other African countries, of course, are doing this xenophobia. Here in Uganda, we are living in harmony with Kenyans, with actually with jazz, we laugh, we share experiences with the Tanzanians. We even have Nigerians here that are friends that are we have Somalis, a lot of Somalis that are here, the friends. They even actually created, they even have their public transport. Their public transport. Very many, of course, Somalis here in Uganda. They're driving tukutuku. If you know those theory, that tricycle that is called tukutuku. Very many um, very many Somalis here, they're driving that tukutuku, they're living good, like no one does fucking xenophobia. We have Eritreans here, no hatred, no hate speech among each other. But when we look at the numbers of migrants in South Africa, of course, the existing public opinion, of course, data shows that the general public is woefully misled about the size of of course, national populations. But the numbers tell a different story. So estimating, of course, migration is quite complex. The movements are not, of course, universal. So may or may not occur or can occur repeatedly. So before, of course, I go any further, allow me, of course, explain briefly what xenophobia is. So we need to, of course, to know and understand what is xenophobia. There are a lot of issues South Africa, of course, South African natives or Black South Africans have been doing for a long time. When we see that there is Dakar. This was a Senegalese, of course, pop star who, of course, announced a boycott on Air Tanzania, of course, and suspended flights to Johannesburg. Of course, Madagascar and Zambia and are refusing to send their soccer teams. Nigeria has recalled its ambassador and pulled out major economic forums. So South Africa is facing backlash after this so-called, of course, xenophobia for a long time. We have had a lot of protests. We have had a lot of violent riots in South Africa, sparkling from this so-called xenophobia in South Africa. But we see that we once had riots in and, of course, and around Johannesburg that targeted immigrants from other African countries. So touching their shops, and leading to at least 10 deaths and very many overtime since this, of course, vice started. Now, angry citizens and governments, of course, across the continent are lashing out at South Africa and its businesses, denouncing what they call xenophobia. So Africans across the continents once rallied behind South Africans in their struggle to defeat the apartheid government, which was finally repressed in elections held, of course, 30 years ago. So now some of course, Africans find themselves in the unfamiliar position of protesting the actions of the same communities in South Africa that they once stood with in solidarity. So the only time, of course, we have seen this type of cooperation of African countries in terms of backlash. So Nigerian politicians, of course, of course, politicians and political research firm intelligence that was in terms of support and during apartheid movement. So the current level of political solidarity on the continent, of course, the riots, and of course, the backlash, the discrimination, the racial discrimination, segregation amongst the blacks in South Africa. This is, of course, this is something that is not good, because, like, I want, like, to some extent, some South Africans, they are ignorant. Secondly, they are not educated, of course, on how to handle issues. I was watching a certain video on TikTok, and this, I won't mention the guy's name, but he's a prominent producer in South Africa. Like, this guy was like, South Africans are very beautiful. Like, South Africans, we have, like, we cannot sue when you're not a South African. It is very easy. Like, he was putting down a hate speech on CHIDIMMA'S towards this girl that was contesting, which something that I can't rely on, that this guy is not educated as such. But most of these people that have been, of course, they have been hidden away from the truth. There are things they praise that are not even important. There are things that they focus on that are not even, like, they're not even important. There are loads. When you look at the foreign, the actually non-South African businesses in South Africa, or let me say this: when you look at the whites businesses in South Africa, actually the whites, these are the people that have the biggest businesses in South Africa, but we have never seen, like, there is something Keith told me the other time, like, if someone is oppressed for a long time comes and he admits and starts praising the oppressor. So South Africans have reached an extent to accept these other races that are within South Africa, the Chinese, the Indians, rather leaving their own black people, not minding, not even putting first the real black people. When you look at the black South Africans, like I said, these are the people that are going through a lot in South Africa. Even within themselves, they don't trust each other. Like I said, that political analyst in South Africa, he said when she was growing up, there's they used to ask her elbow, like to mention elbow in Zulu language, by the police, so that the police can confirm that he's really a South African. When will this end? After 30 years of fighting, ending racial discrimination in South Africa, now it comes back to we Africans, to our own Africans. Why is it that it doesn't go to the coloreds, it doesn't go to the white South Africans? Why is it that it comes back to the blacks in South Africa? It's terrible and crazy. It's terrible and crazy. But the xenophobia I'm talking about, one would like, of course, to know, and of course, someone will ask me, yes, you're talking about xenophobia, but what does this mean? When we see that, of course, prior to the 1994, of course, immigrants from elsewhere faced discrimination, and even this is the grassroots of xenophobia in South Africa. This is how it started in South Africa. Xenophobia actually it is just hating your like hating people like people of the same descent. Let me say that people of the same descent, you're hating your black, your fellow black people. That is how I can, of course, I can explain as xenophobia. But xenophobia in South Africa, like I said, its roots are dated back prior to the 1994 immigrants from elsewhere that faced discrimination and even violence in South Africa due to the competition, to the scarce economic, of course, opportunities. So, opportunities in South Africa, they have been declining over time. Resources in South Africa have been declining over time. Now, the native South Africans, they put this blame to these other blacks that, of course, that come from. Like I said, I've not seen coloreds doing xenophobia. I've not seen white South Africans doing this, but it is the black. Why? Why black? It is because the black, they are the oppressed. The black, these are the people that are going through a lot in South Africa. These are people that are living in ghettos. These are people that are getting one meal one in a day. They are eating once. These are people that are not going to school. These are people that are surviving on drugs in South Africa for their entire life. I made research the other time, and like when you look at the average people that start, the average age that starts drugs in South Africa, they start from 8 years. In South Africa, someone has started, blacks, someone has started, of course, taking drugs. Why? Hopelessness, desperatism, stress. They are going through a lot. So, when you see that after the majority rule in the 1994, contrary to the expectations, the incidence of xenophobia increased. And by 2008, at least 62 people were killed in xenophobic uprising attacks. These are the recorded estimates of people. But I've been watching a lot of videos. A lot of people have been killed in South Africa, and no one has not even noticed. But it's because of xenophobia. When these South Africans see late innocent from Uganda is having a shop somewhere, they think you're very rich. They think you're occupying the scarce resources in South Africa. So in 2015, we see that another nationwide spike in xenophobic attacks against immigrants in the general prompted, of course, a number of foreign governments to begin, of course, repatriating their citizens. So, in 2018, we see that 62% of the South Africans expressed negative sentiments about foreign nationals living and working in South Africa, believing that immigrants are a burden on society and taking jobs and social benefits which Black South Africans, could have enjoyed in their country. And of course, 61% of the South Africans thought that the immigrants were more responsible for crime rather than other groups. So there is no factual evidence to substitute, of course, the notion that immigrants are the main culprits of criminal activities in South Africa, even though the claim is incorrectly made and sometimes by politicians and public figures. So this thing of xenophobia, it starts with the politicians, then it goes to, uh, of course, to ordinary people. So between the year of 2010 and 2017, the number of foreigners living in South Africa increased from 2 million people to 4 million people. So the proportion of South Africa's total population that is foreign born increased from 2.8% in 2005 to 7% by 2019. So South Africa is the largest, of course, recipient of immigrants on the African continent. We know that. We know that. Very many people wish to go to South Africa. Staff going to South Africa, going to go to South Africa, stuff. I've not seen any other country on the continent where, of course, very many people wish to go. I've not discovered the reason why, but very many people wish to go to South Africa. Very many people would love, apart from me, would love to go to South Africa. They wish to go to South Africa. Apart from me, like I said, apart from me, I've not even ever dreamt about going to South Africa. To do what? I've not even ever dreamed about going to South Africa. It's not like I don't like South Africa, but now I go there and do what? But xenophobia in South Africa before 1994, we see that attacks against Mozambican and Congolese immigrants between 1984 and the end of hostilities in the country, an estimated number of 50,000 to 35 to 350,000 Mozambican fled to South Africa. While never granted the refugee status, they were technically allowed to settle in the Bantustans or black homelands created during the apartheid system. These areas, they still exist even up to now, the Bantustans or the black homelands by the black people. So the reality was, of course, more varied, with the homeland of the Reboa banning Mozambican settlers outright, with Ganzakuru, of course, welcomed the refugees with the support in the form of land and equipment. So those Gwazakuru, however, found themselves confined to the homeland and reliable for, of course, deportation. And should they officially enter South Africa, so the evidence exists that their hosts denied them access to economic resources. So unrest and civil war likewise saw larger numbers of Congolese people immigrant to South Africa, many illegally in 1993 and 1997. So subsequently, we see that xenophobia attitudes towards these refugees typified by them being denied access to primary health care, which they were technically, of course, entitled to. When we look at South Africa still, despite of the lack of directly comparable data, xenophobia in South Africa is perceived to have significantly increased after the election of the black majority government in 1994. So, Africa's transition to democracy in 1994, a new non-racial xenophobia, of course, emerged in a country that has specifically targeted refugees in South Africa. So the ANC's government, in its attempts to overcome the divides of the past and build new forms of social cohesion, embarked on aggressive and inclusive, of course, national building project. One anticipated byproduct of this project that has been a growth of intolerance towards outsiders. So violence against foreign citizens and African refugees has become increasingly common, and communities are divided by hostility and suspicion. So South Africans are, of course, expressing the harshest anti-immigrant sentiments, with the 21% of the South Africans in the favor of a complete ban on the foreign entry and 64 in favor of the strict limitation on the numbers of the permitted foreigners within South Africans. So by the contrast, the next highest proportion of respondents in favor of the complete ban on immigration were neighboring Namibia and, of course, Botswana at 10%. So in 2004, we saw that violence and, of course, reconciliation of attitudes amongst the police officers in the Johannesburg area found that 87% of the respondents believe that the most undocumented immigrants in, of course, Johannesburg are involved in crime, despite there being no statistical evidence to substitute the perception. Such views, combined with the vulnerability of illegal aliens, led to abuse, including violence, extortion, among others. And in 2007, of course, we saw that, of course, refugees in Durban claimed that, of course, immigrants could not rely on police for protection, but instead found police mistreating them, stealing from them, and making unconfirmed allegations that they sell drugs. So 2 years earlier, at a similar, of course, 2 years earlier, we saw that of course, refugees and asylum seekers were mistreated by the police with xenophobic attitudes in South Africa. So this thing is in, of course, in politics, in social way. We saw that these people, the immigrants or non-South Africans, decent people, people from other African countries, time will reach when they were denied health care. Now we see that the police mistreats these people just because they are not South Africans. So, immigrants from Malawi, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique living of course, in the Alexandra, of course, township were physically assaulted over a period of several weeks in January 1994 as armed gangs identified suspected undocumented migrants and marched them to the police station in an attempt to clean the township of foreigners. So we see a lot of people in South Africa, politicians, even the people, the police, have always blamed foreigners for crime, unemployment, and sexual attacks. So Mozambican national and two Senegalese citizens were thrown out of the plane. The assault was carried out by a group returning from Elare that blamed the foreigners for unemployment, crime, and the spread of AIDS in South Africa. So, by 2000, 7 foreigners were killed in Cape Flats over a 5-week period in what police described as xenophobic murders, possibly motivated by the fear that outsiders would claim property belonging to the locals. And by 2001, residents of the, of course, of the Zanscript Spring informal settlement gave, of course, Zambian citizens 10 days to leave the area. When the foreigners failed to leave voluntarily, they were forcibly evicted and their shacks were burned down and rooted. So community members said they were angry that Mozambican were employed whilst locals remained jobless and blamed the foreigners for a number of crimes. No injuries, of course, were reported in that amongst these, of course, Zambians. So in 2005, still, and the first week of the last week of 2005 and the first week of 2006, at least 4 people, including 2 Zimbabwean, died in the, of course, in the settlement, in the black settlement, after foreigners were blamed for the death of a local man. So shacks belonging to foreigners were set alight, and of course, and locals demanded the police to remove all immigrants from the area. So in 2006, still, Somalese refugees appealed for protection after 21 Somali traders were killed in January that year, 2006, and more 26 in August. So the immigrants believed the murders to be motivated by xenophobia, although police rejected the assertion of a connected campaign to drive Somali traders out of township in the Western Cape. So attacks on foreign nationals increased markedly in the late 2007, and it is believed that there were at least a dozen attacks between January and May 2008. The most severe incidents occurred in January when 2 Somali shops or shop owners were murdered in the Eastern Cape town, towns of Jeffrey Bay and Eastern London. So we see that even 7 more people were killed, including the Mozambican, Pakistanis, and the Somalis nationals after their shops and shacks were set alight, of course, in Pretoria. So in 2008, we see that a series of riots started in the township of Alexandria, in the northeast of part of Johannesburg, when, of course, locals attacked migrants from Mozambique, Malawi, and Zimbabwe, killing 2 people and, of course, injuring 40 others. Some attacks were, of course, reported to have been, of course, singing Jacob Zuma's campaign song Ushinini Wami, which Zulu brings, which of course means, it is in Zulu, it means bring me my machine gun. So in the following weeks, the violence spread first to other settlements, of course, in the Gauteng province, then to the coastal cities of Durban and Cape Town. So attacks were also reported in parts of Southern Cape, Mpumalanga, the Northwest, and Free State. By the end of the riot, 62 people were reported dead. 100 and, of course, 1,400 suspects were arrested in connection with the violence. 9 the attacks, 128 individuals had been convicted and 30 found not guilty in 105 concluded court cases. 208 cases had been withdrawn, and 156 were still being had during that time. So 1 year after the attack, prosecutors said that 137 people had been convicted, 182 cases had been withdrawn because the witnesses and complaints had been left, of course, had left the country. So 51 cases were underway and ready for trial, and 82 had been referred for further investigations. In 2009, 1 year after attacks, the consortium for refugees and migrants in South Africa said that foreigners remained under the threat of violence and that little had been done to address the causes of attacks. So organizations complained of lack of accountability for those responsible for public violence, insufficient, of course, investigations into the investigators, and the lack of public government inquiry. So between 2009 and 2012, reports emerged regarding possible resurgence of xenophobic related activity and the organizing of attacks in the Western Cape. So reports of the threats and secret meetings by local businessmen surfaced in, of course, in very many Bantustan or black homelands, where we see that separate meetings by the local businessmen discussing what to do about Somalis, separate meetings by the local business Somalis shopkeepers. Sorry, the anti-eviction campaign brought these issues to open by organizing a series of anti-xenophobic meetings attempting to find the root cause of the crisis. So, so we see that a community of about 1,500 to 2,500 Zimbabwean farm workers was forcibly evicted from their homes in their informal settlements in 2009. So, a grape farming town in the Western Cape, no persons were physically assaulted by bombs and were thrashed and, of course, rooted. And this led to the biggest displacement of the foreign nationals since 2008. So, the Zambians were then housed in the displaced personal camps where some remained for a year until they were closed. So, a lot of things have been happening on foreigners in South Africa. So, we see that inciting the attack in the possible collusion with informal labor blockers who had financial interest in getting rid of the Mozambican competitors. South African workers also accused the farmers of employing the Mozambicans at less than minimum wage. So farmers and of course Mozambican workers denied this. In 2010, we see that claims that that would be massive planned, of course, xenophobic violence at the end of 2010 Football World Cup. However, this did not happen, and a lot of things have been, of course, happening in relation to xenophobia. So South Africa's borders, of course, were remilitarized, and of course we see that uh, 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 of course very many people say most of the foreigners that are in South Africa, they are not of South African descent, they are not South Africans, a lot. So I'm saying Maria, hello, hello Maria, how are you?
Hey, you mean you've just seen me now?
I was just saying. But I'm saying
Hmm?
it is night that side. I'm saying it is night that side.
Yeah, it is night over here. You know that I live on a different time zone. You don't know
Uh,
what's the
saying it is night.
what's the time over there? It is night here at the
Mm,
borders of Congo and Uganda. Ah.
mm. Okay, I go.
Anyway, it is not night. It's just cloudy. The clouds are gray. It's going to rain soon, and that's why you see like it's dark. Aha, mama kyogamba wakanda bakati. Sobola otya okugamba nti amusingi Marie? Teweesesa
Nakakula.
takatosesa.
Nakakula. Nakakula bw'obwedda nini mu
Shamaposhi
kusoma.
twala kuli
Bw'obwedda nini mu kusoma.
wakanda we.
Mm.
Okay, got it. Anyway,
Okay.
hmm, about the issues of Miss South Africa. Of course, Chidimma, a Nigerian. Okay, her father is a Nigerian, I guess. Her mom is a South African woman. Um, you know that this issue is a little bit okay. It's not a surprise to me, first of all, because for a very long time, South Africa has not given that comfortability to other Africans living in it. And I know the moment you mention this, a lot of South Africans come on you. Yeah, we do. We love all of them. Except when they come, they do cry, they commit crimes and all that. People are committing crimes everywhere in the world. And I don't want to think, actually, it's not just so true for South Africans to think it is only other Africans who are coming in South Africa that are committing crimes. Every now and then, we see the highest rape of women in Johannesburg and other cities in South Africa being committed by South African men. Every now and then, even if right now you go to YouTube, you go to Google, you go to Facebook, you are going to see young girls from schools being gang raped by their fellow students in South Africa and later on strangled to death. And they'll keep on looking who raped, because first of all, it doesn't come in their mind that these other children are the ones who are raping their fellow scholars. So they want to say that it's only other people who come outside South Africa who are committing these crimes. Because it's like every crime that is committed in South Africa is pinned on another black person who has come. And for me, I feel like this is just not right. And this is probably the biggest reason why South Africa can never address its crime rate levels. Because the moment you start pointing your fingers and not addressing the real issue, then you cannot come up with a solution. There are a lot of crimes. There is bank robbery, all right? There is rape, high crime, high rate of rape in South Africa, drug use and drug abuse, and of course, too much of drugs on the market. And this is not people who are dealing with this are not one-sided, that they're Africans or are foreigners. But there is one thing I've also realized, that we got a lot of Africans in South Africa who have built schools. Some of them have become permanent residents in South Africa. They have schools, they have colleges, they have universities in South Africa, because there is a certain time where apparently most South Africans were not investing in education in South Africa, and a lot of people were investing in this were usually foreigners. Particularly, Uganda has got a lot of people who have schools over there, their own schools, and of course, they support that sector. Now, we also, of course, like always, it's always about drug. They hate the first label is about drugs, right? You will find a lot of South Africans trying to peer. Nigerians are doing drugs. They are selling drugs to young children. Okay, they are selling drugs to young children in schools. But it's not only Nigerians who are selling drugs in South Africa. And if at all Nigerians are allowed to sell drugs, if at all Nigerians are allowed to have such kind amount of drugs on the streets, that means the government of South Africa is also involved at a certain level, whether we like it or not. It is involved, because there is no way drug dealers would be having such a liberty on the streets. We've got Nigerians here in our country, for sure. I'm not, maybe probably I'm comparing two different countries, because someone may say Uganda is not so very developed like South Africa and so on. But we have seen a lot of liberty. First of all, before even you pinpoint your fingers, first address your constitution. First, address the laws that are governing such kind of activities, because you're not going to wake up and start blaming Africans who have come to your country for you for the laws, for the weak laws that are working in your country. Secondly, you're not going to blame them. Sometime I came across this very post where South Africans were like, we are not going to allow a Nigerian lady to come and represent. And of course, the person who won, of course, is a white lady. But they say she's deaf. I guess she uses some hearing birds and stuff. I don't know how they call those things. But she's deaf. She's deaf, and I think she has like she's a disabled white woman. South Africans were celebrating her. We're extremely happy. And okay, for me, because it's not only white people who are deaf. We have got black people who are deaf as well. So I'm not gonna be like I'm not gonna look at the fact that she has a disability, because we have got black people with disabilities too. So like, I'm gonna look at the fact that she's not a black woman, and she won. She managed to win. She managed to win this Miss South African. And as South Africans are advocating her to go for Miss World, and they're like, she should represent the Miss World, I guess, because she has a disability or something. Maybe she's special case, whatever. I don't know. Um, so I came across a post, and I was like asking that South Africans will rather embrace, okay, will rather embrace a white in South Africa than embracing another African in South Africa. And I just commented that and let it race, and actually a lot of people were tripping on that comment. They were not denying that fact, and most of them were saying yes, we rather stay with the whites, they rather take everything. They have developed our city, we are among the top developed countries in Africa and all that. And I looked at the ignorance, and usually this is all about women, and everyone was like, don't talk about race, we do not have race issues in South Africa. That is a mental disability. I'm sorry to say that, because first of all, you cannot say we do not have race in South Africa, whether you like it or not, whether you accept it or not. There is a racial difference. in South Africa. Whether we speak about it, whether South Africans accept it or not, that is just the truth. So I posed to that particular lady, I asked her a question that if you answer these few questions, then probably we shall talk. I asked a question that who controls your economy? Who represents the economy of South Africa? I asked her who controls the agricultural sector. I don't want to see a governor, who minister, so and so. I want to understand who are the people who run the entire agricultural sector of South Africa. I told her three. Who owns the most fertile lands until now in South Africa? Okay. If there is no racial discrimination, I want you to tell me the ratio between the black rich South Africans and the white rich South Africans in South Africa. I also asked a question and said, okay, fine. Probably there is no racial discrimination. I want to understand that who are the big majorities that decide for South Africa? And secondly, fourthly, why did you guys, of course, who introduced the GMOs? Because most of the biggest farmers are dealing in GMOs in South Africa. And of course, who are those farmers? Are they black farmers? Are they white farmers? Okay. And then when we had Russia and Ukraine having a conflict, why did you all go on the streets striking because you were hungry? Why do you run out of food? A country that has fertile soils, now where does your food go? If there is no discrimination, so no one is going to wake up and start telling you Nigerians came and took land. No, you're not going to come and tell me Ghanaians came in South Africa and they took our land and now they are planting or they are cultivating on the most fertile lands of South Africa. No, I think the South Africans themselves are focusing on the things that are actually not important. Because you see, when it comes to crime, there is criminality, there is crime everywhere. I'm going to use an example of Nigerians. Nigerians are committing crimes everywhere. They are committing crimes in the US, they are committing crimes in the UK, they are committing crimes, but the constitutions or the law that, of course, the laws that are governing the area at some point, they reduce the rate of criminality. If at all it's about drugs, why doesn't the constitutions of South Africa hold firmly the issue of drugs? Because that would be the only way. If at all you are South Africans and you are a Nigerian and you are arrested doing drugs, go to prison, go get a heavy sentence. We are not seeing the constitution doing this. We are not seeing the South African constitution doing this. If at all you are caught selling drugs to young children, then get arrested. People rape all the time and no one is taken to prison. It has become like a norm of a day. And then uh, it's like they are just so used to everything that until you are affected directly is when you'll be crying on camera. My daughter did not come back home. When she went to school, she was gang raped. Even if you check right now, you're going to find more than 20 cases of gang raping young girls, young school girls in a day. More than 20. I repeat this, and I'm saying this with no fear because it's the truth. If you check the crime rate today, I'm telling you, you will find that more than 20 young girls have died today. They die apparently every day after being gang raped. After they get gang raped and sometimes strangled to death, and then others are thrown in the rubbish, others by the riversides and whatever. I think South Africa is missing the biggest point, and it's putting the energy elsewhere. Why do we have such kind of crimes in South Africa? Why don't we have people addressing? Because the society of South Africa, the people who should be demanding for the addressing of such kind of things actually are focusing on the wrong things entirely. Like I said, if we are talking about Nigerians coming in with drugs and other people, I'm not only saying Nigerians, I guess, because South Africans just hate apparently everybody who is not a South African but black. They don't hate whites but black. I think they fancy these other people. I think they fancy the Mzungu a lot. That's why we see a lot of them wanna be like the Mzungu. Okay, so if we have such kind of levels of people or crime rate within the society, and people are turning a blind eye and focusing on the things that are actually not important, then I think this could be the reason why we see high crime rates in South Africa every single day. I'm going to give you a country, because when you put laws and focus on those laws and make them strong, it would be very hard for a lot of people to break them. We have got some countries in Asia that don't allow drugs. And even if people smuggle drugs in the country, it is at a high risk. So you cannot find a very huge population or number of Nigerians traveling to that place to sell drugs because they know the consequences. Now, why doesn't South Africa do that? Because South Africa itself is benefiting on the existence of the drug dealers who are coming in its country. This is why they don't address. The government benefits because once you're a drug dealer in South Africa, you register. This is something that the people of South Africa don't really understand. Cartel people, the cartel leaders register. You register and you're supposed to pay a certain amount of money, which is not as amount of money which is as low as those who are dealing in white businesses. And the government will know, oh, Maria is a cartel. She runs those ghettos the other side. She runs, and the police knows, and the government knows, and you're giving people money, and they're allowing this. And now the big cartels who are dealing drugs in South Africa are actually the Nigerians. Now we have got these vendors. I don't know how they call that in the world of cartels, but we have got these vendors on the market. They are South Africans. We don't see Nigerians on the market with bags having cocaine. We have them in the upper industry, right? We don't have them on the street selling cocaine, hiding, giving out. No, we are not having them on the streets giving out cocaine to young girls, to young boys in schools. We are having South Africans buying drugs from the big men of Nigeria, Ghana, and other countries, and then for them, they are selling it on retail, and they are doing it within each other. They get to understand the language, they know the code they use, they know the places. Now, you cannot start complaining about they are giving drugs to our young children. People are buying drugs from the Nigerians and giving these drugs to the young children. First of all, in South Africa, you have to survive. You will find even young children themselves are buying these drugs and selling them in schools to their other fellow students. So the hate that, because the most, why am I talking a lot about this? Was the moment you ask South Africans, like, what is their hate between them and other? I was going to say, you're killing us. The unemployment thing is not all that big. Most of them are talking about they are killing us with their drugs. There is too much drugs. More especially, they hate apparently a lot of Nigerians. They hate Nigerians more than any other. They're going to say we hate those people because they're bringing drugs and all that. Drugs have existed in South Africa. It was introduced in South Africa during the apartheid. There were no Nigerians during the apartheid. So you see that they're missing the point. They are missing the point of addressing the real issue. Drugs were introduced in South Africa during the apartheid policy. And they were introduced in the society of the black people to make them concentrate a lot on that abuse and forget the real struggle. Because we have seen this very technique being used in the United States of America, where drugs were introduced in the society of the black people by the whites. So they want to tell me during that time of apartheid, where we had a lot of blacks consuming drugs, forgetting the struggle, forgetting to go to school, lagging behind in apparently everything. They got extremely addicted and neglected even thyself. They want to tell me it was Nigerians who were doing that at that time. Was it other black people doing that at that time? So if we still go back to the genesis of this, maybe a lot of people are ignorant about this. Maybe they just don't want to accept the truth. Maybe, ooh, ooh, kwa, omunye. Obukonkome bannange gwisano gwina n'amatundu. So, if at all you are to blame, first to revise. They shouldn't be. I know I'm not like trying to say Nigerians don't do that or other Africans are not committing crime. We have got South Africans who come here to steal ATM machines. Abu, did you know that? We've got South Africans who come here to steal ATM machines. I was baby, but no one has ever blamed them for what was stolen. No. But we've got a lot of them who come down here. They of course go and pay hotel, they sleep in hotels and so on. But when they've come to rob ATM machines, we have got a lot of people. So if you wake up, like, you start blaming, everybody for the issues that you're having and not addressing the real matter, then it is wrong. I think, first of all, South Africa should understand why there is too much drug use in South Africa, why there is too much drug abuse in South Africa. They should understand how did this begin, because it wasn't the Nigerians who brought this in the first place. It wasn't other Africans who introduced drugs in South Africa in the first place. It was introduced by the whites during the apartheid because they wanted to, of course, they wanted them to get addicted, and of course they did. Okay, so I think they should first look into that. But when they start from the genesis or the root cause of this all, probably they will find the real solution to this problem or other problems that are affecting South Africa. But they shouldn't point out or have poor reasons for them to hate others, more especially the Africans. I think they are turning their guns on the wrong people. Okay.
There is a certain video, however much actually, the beauty contests in South Africa, yeah, they are won by a white South African. But a lot of people actually in South Africa, they are not happy about this. Most of the people in South Africa, the people who woke up in their minds, they are not happy about this. There is a certain video I wanted to share about that. There is a certain video I wanted to share about that.
South Africans, I think it's fair to say that y'all literally are the worst.
Oh my.
Y'all literally are.
Tell me what you think about it.
South Africans, I think it's fair to say that y'all literally are the worst, the absolute worst type of black people to exist in this world today. And I say this with a fucking straight face. If you're South African, go ahead and unfollow me. I don't type of black people to exist.
Of course.
Africans, I think it's fair to say that y'all literally are the worst, the absolute worst type of black people to exist in this world today. And I say this with a fucking straight face. If you're South African, go ahead and unfollow me. I don't give a I don't care how much you're so pro-black and you're embarrassed by your people. Fuck you. Get the fuck away. You're trash just like the rest of them. Because there's this mentality, there's this concept that because I have a platform or something, like I'm not supposed to be just as fucked. Oh, I'm more fucked up than you are. If I ever met a South African in person from today on, a black South African, I probably will spit on it. I'll spit on their toes. Pathetic humans.
Yo, hectic.
So what are your thoughts on all of that?
That was very hectic. The hatred, that from that video, it showed me how a lot of them are basing all of where they are at with this whole thing on like misinformation about the whole situation and just not understanding the whole thing and what transpired, how it transpired, and why it transpired.
So for me, this was a very interesting thing that played out. I didn't care about this whole Miss South Africa thing.
Yeah.
I didn't even watch the pageant, the final, or whatever. I just woke up the next day and then I saw who Miss South Africa was. And my first thought was, oh shit. They're gonna have a field day with this one because they're gonna make it a racial thing. They're gonna say that we got rid of a black woman
for a white woman.
It wasn't even about that.
Yeah.
At all. And that was the first thing that I went to because I know how these people just think in one certain way.
Little box, like
they're not able to properly think.
Absolutely.
So they always just think in one way. So I knew as soon as I saw that Miss South Africa was white, I knew they were gonna make this a racial.
Never mind the fact that she's actually an incredible human being.
So everything broke out, and then we have so many people commenting on this issue. Like I said, Burna Boy commented.
Growing a business is hard. Growing a global business is even harder.
Talia had her 2 cents as well into it. Things got so crazy over the weekend that whenever something happened between Nigeria and South Africa, there was just always like a huge war of words. It even got so bad that when Nigeria got disqualified in the 4x400 meter men's relay race for lane infringement or something like that. And South Africa qualified for the final. Even our president.
Just stay in your lane, right?
Even our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, threw a shot at Nigeria about being able to stay in our lane and things like that. Just my 2 cents on Miss South Africa. I think she's a decent representation of Miss South Africa. I think she'll represent us very well on the world stage. To us, it wasn't about race. The fact that there are people out there that actually think we do not want a black person to represent us.
We would have put Zosvini, we would have put Shed. Come on.
So there's a lot of previous Miss South Africans that are black and that have represented us very well on the world stage. So this wasn't even about race.
I feel like they're just enjoying this. They know that all of these things that they're saying are just stupid.
Yeah. So and then there's a couple of misconceptions that were floating around on social media that I just want to comment on. So one was, now that it came out that Miss South Africa was white and South Africans were defending her, South Africans were happy that she was representing us and all that stuff like that. The Nigerians obviously were not happy about this, and they started calling us slaves.
Yeah.
We enjoy slaves, we are like reverse slaves, the ones that like to go back to our oppressors and all that kind of stuff like that. And it's an interesting take, but it doesn't hold much weight, because when you think about it, South Africans are not very synonymous with slavery, one. Yeah. And then two, when you think about it, the main reason why foreigners are being able to take a lot of jobs and South Africans are not, it's because foreigners are willing to work
at below minimum wage
and willing to work for next to
and
nothing.
we're not we're not willing to do that.
And South Africans are not willing.
We're not willing to be exploited.
Yeah, South Africans are not willing to be exploited.
Slavery.
So the whole slavery narrative, it's funny. I think it's just a projection on them.
Yeah,
they're just trying to project that.
Yes, because for them it's like white and black, and then slave master, slave. No, we don't have slaves here.
And even if you were to check now, like in terms of modern day slavery, Nigerians are like one of the highest percentages of slaves and stuff like that, all that crazy stuff. So it's like, okay, you're projecting this slavery onto us to try and make us feel bad. It's whatever. That doesn't
and mainly they're also basing these things on like the inequality that we have. Look, we are very aware of our inequality problem. And we are trying to address that. Like they're acting like we're just jumping onto these things and not doing anything about our inequality. We've been having these conversations about inequality for a long time. And we understand that that is one of the things that aren't just going to change like overnight. But we want to do it properly. We're not going to be doing it now and be irrational about it, and chasing white people away and all of that, the way the rest of Africa is wanting us to do it. Unfortunately, that's not how we move, and we're not going to move like that. It didn't work for you also. I don't understand why they're projecting it so hard on us that for some reason they're expecting that it's going to work here or whatever. Whether it's going to work or not, we're not trying to move like that. We're not this pro-black that is anti-white that is being pushed on in Africa, and I just don't get it. I really don't get it.
Just on that point about inequality, so whenever they're trying to bring up our inequality, whenever they're trying to bring up our poverty and all that kind of stuff, South Africans will fight back and bring up their poverty and bring up their living conditions.
Hello again. Now let's take you to Nigeria, where more and more people are said to be living in severe poverty. Recent data from the National Bureau of Statistics of Nigeria shows that more than 133...
And it just became a poverty Olympics at some
point.
Which I was like, this is very
we're weird. Better than you. We're better than you.
That just ended up becoming very
crazy.
Because most of the people on Twitter are privileged middle class to rich people, and we are busy arguing with other privileged people about who's poorer.
That are irrelevant to us.
Like it just became poverty Olympics, and there you can bring up the fact that we have a 60-something% poverty rate. So they have a 60-something%
unemployment
poverty rate. So like things in terms of poverty, like I don't even know why you're trying to. That was just weird. Competing about who's worse off in poverty, and like these are the things that just make it.
That's crazy. Weird. We're not even the same, y'all.
Yeah, but anyway, there was just things like that where now people are just trying to do this poverty Olympics just to try and prove like which country is better, whether South Africa is better or Nigeria is better. Whatever you feel is better, that's up to you. That's usually a preference thing. And then another misconception that they started to throw around out there like during the weekend was like Mandela would have been turning in his grave just to see this happen, just to see a white girl win Miss.
Are you serious?
That to me, that's when it clicked that
they have no idea.
Don't understand
what Mandela even stood for.
Our total dynamics.
They don't understand. You don't understand our dynamics. That's worse. Putting Mandela in. This is the perfect representation of Mandela. Us being happy for the white girl who's there, who won Miss South Africa, is a perfect representation. Not because she's white, but because we are embracing all different, aspects or parts of being a South African, and white is one of them.
No one is born hating another person for the color of their skin, religion, or background. Hatred and intolerance have to be learned. Even in the grimmest times, I have seen glimmers of humanity which reassured me that man's goodness is the flame that can never be extinguished.
So
we are not just black here in South Africa.
To me, that's when I knew okay, a lot of these people are very ignorant and of what South Africa is about.
I know.
And that's why they always try to project it to us. So South Africa, and it's because of Mandela, It's because of him that South Africa is like this today. It's because of
Yes,
him.
he chose this path.
So
Like he chose this path that we must come
Okay.
together as a nation. We must be of love and whatever. So
They're
we are
so
trying to. We
complicated
do that.
that
That's what
probably they
we're
don't know
and
for.
adopted it, and we're happy to adopt it because we don't have hate like that, bruh. I don't know why you guys are painting us so like hateful people, and it's not.
I know why, but I'm a kid too.
It's not.
Yeah, but
It's
it's
not.
more like a joke coffee.
People who say yeah know that that's not true. You know what I'm saying? They know. They fight to even stay here because they know that that's not true. South African people are not hateful.
So with the whole Mandela story, again,
So
Mandela
apparently, others
pushed,
are
like,
evil.
he
But South
pushed
African
for
people are not
diversity.
evil.
They push for
They're not able to
inclusivity.
deny
Yes.
they
They
were
push
small.
for a non-racial South Africa.
Yes.
So the reason why South Africa is one of the only African countries that didn't expel the white population
Was because of
but because Mandela didn't want us to do that. He wanted us to be diverse.
we are rainbow nation.
He wanted us to be diverse.
Rainbow. That's what rainbow
No,
nation
no, I'm not
is.
too full, now I need
He practiced this to an extent where his deputy president was the previous president of apartheid. That's what Mandela wanted.
Yes.
He wanted all of us to be one.
That we can work together. Let's put aside this irrational hate for each other. You guys painting it as though we're worshiping white people really shows you that you really shows us you have no idea who we are. Like you have no idea.
It was just one of those things where it's like, okay, you guys don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then two, it was like they always come with this
Yeah,
argument
Paula.
that why don't you guys
Yeah.
have the same energy for white people? Why don't you guys do this to white people? And we have two previous examples where
We've spoken
a white
about
person was found out to be a racist who was a South African contestant,
and what did we do?
and we bullied her out until she quit. Second
thing.
Second case, a white person was found out to be a bully, and we
Back
bullied
in
her
school, out as well.
She exited the competition because we don't want those kind of people representing.
We're very strict about who and what represents us, and please respect that as well.
So they always like to deflect and be like, what about the white person?
Like
What
we're
about
not saying
this
we
person?
also have a perfect relationship here interracially.
Yeah, like they always like to point out our domestic affairs and be like, what about this? What about that? And then when we point out their domestic affairs, then it's like, then it becomes a poverty Olympics, which is pointless. It's like all of this could have been avoided if y'all allowed South Africans to decide who they want to be represented. So right now, Nigeria gonna have their own like Miss Universe Nigeria pageant, and there's already tribalism going on over there, where
they've always been
where Nigerians are not happy about certain
Yoruba.
they're not happy about certain tribes being representing a certain state or certain I don't know
Like
but
how can
but there's already representation problems that they already have in there. You're not going to see a South African enter into your business. That's
like
your
it's
business.
your business.
Y'all can sort it out.
It's okay.
And whoever wins, as long as you're happy with whoever wins,
and then that's
fine. Not to see it. And in fact, it got to such a point where I think the organizer of Miss Universe Nigeria invited Chidimma to participate.
Yes, they didn't even want to accept her, but they were the biggest ones who were talking, hey, we're so evil, we're so cruel, whatever.
It was just one of those things where a lot of things
you can
came
see.
clear. It was like there's a certain group of people that are trying to dictate how South Africans behave.
Now you can see the mentality, and that's the mentality of apparently.
I just came to the realization that we are actually different from the rest of Africa. The rest of Africa is still on that oppressive, slave and master, just this whole wave of like racial issue. And for us, we're not even thinking like that.
Yes.
Our only racial issue.
But happy with how far we've actually come. Like the way that they view white people is not how we view white people. Like I've actually learned that from this whole ordeal. The people actually have a problem with them and how they unhealthy relationship with white people.
All of these things just came to light, and there's another misconception that was floating around where it's like South Africans just hate Africans in general. And again, that was proven to not be true.
It's Nigerians, I know that.
Yeah, they were pushing that, but it was proven to not be true, because when you saw like the closing days of the Olympics, Botswana and South Africa and Namibia, we were all supporting each other, we were all showing each other love. It was actually a very nice.
Yeah. How many Botswanas have been you? South Africa does not embrace anybody. Not Botswana, not words.
It's no DNA. It's RSA or something like that.
yes.
So that was a very nice thing. And then Namibia joined in as well. Joined in the celebrations when I think South Africa also won their medal, and Namibia also celebrated as well. And
Honestly, there was no animosity. Like, I'm genuinely happy for them. I like.
Yeah. So again, that was just proven. It's just that South Africans do love and tolerate other Africans. It's just the ones that we don't tolerate are the ones that come into the country and
for the wrong reasons and do the wrong things. And it's not just us that have a problem with this. There are many other countries.
So the main reason why South Africans didn't want Chidimma to represent them is because she's Nigerian, and Nigerians do not have a good reputation. Well, Nigerians don't have a good reputation here in South Africa because of all the things that they do. And that's probably the biggest reason why South Africans are like, no, we don't want you to represent us. Because you come here, you do nonsense, and then now you want to represent us when we don't want
to. That's crazy.
And then again, Nigerians have a bad reputation.
But this lady was born in South Africa.
Nigeria is a strange spot.
Nigeria. Her mother is a South African. She has never been to Nigeria. She doesn't even have a Nigerian passport. She has a South African passport. She has a South African birth certificate. She was born in South Africa. Both her parents are in South Africa. And she has even never been to Nigeria before. And then, yes, because she's a Nigerian. Oh, God damn it. If at all this was being done everywhere in Africa, you'd realize that even most of the people we see or we know, the prominent people, are not even indigenous people of those particular countries. People may embrace this because now you cannot claim of we have no hate in South Africa, and then at the end you open the mandible. You're talking like they did not want her because she's a Nigerian, and then you're the one talking, you're shooting your own foot. You're talking bullshit. You're a hypocrite because you cannot be talking about we love, other people can hate, South Africa is up here. First, you don't have that mentality of other Africans. Fuck you. And then later, and then you claim you don't want the level of ignorance. And anyway, and those are things that are very, very weird. First here, we are okay. We are okay having our whites. Is that what they are saying? Because we are, and then the funniest thing, they were not calling her a South African. They were identifying her as a white, so the white girl had to win. She asked, the truth still remains that they know she's not. And that's why they were calling her that. But if you can call that lady a South African and then don't call a black woman who was born in South Africa, raised in South Africa, because according to the constitution, actually you can become a citizen by birth, by registration. You understand? So she's all. And you're not calling her a South African because she has that Chidimma name, because her dad is a Nigerian and so on. And then you're embracing somebody. This is the love. For us, we are not like other African country. When it comes to hate, we are up there. You cannot. Bullshit. Mpulira nkoowa nnyo ennaku zino. Bwe yasiina namukka bulungi. Kozi enjo olina paper.
History because she's the first Black. The new Miss Universe Philippines is half Black. Okay. Apparently, she's making history because she's the first half Black, half Filipino to win the title. Honestly, I'm just so happy to see this representation because you guys know that we got colorism worldwide, but especially in Asia. I'm like happily surprised that somebody of African descent was able to win. Obviously, it is a rarity if it's the first in the whole history of the competition. This is my first time hearing about Chelsea, but I would definitely be tuning in and supporting anything in the future. I just can't imagine the hardships that one has to go through. I didn't even want to look to see if there was any controversy or whatever, because I just think that we should just celebrate this. I'm rooting for everybody Black. No matter what the skin tone, this sort of representation is so positive because we are always dealing with people believing we don't belong in these spaces, believing we can't be the beauty standard. So I'm just really, really happy that this happened. And I hope she gets the support she deserves. Who knows? Maybe some of the other Asian countries will follow suit and start giving opportunities to people who are half Black. We're also starting to see half Black idols being accepted in different music spaces in Asia as well. So hopefully this is a positive step forward.
This beautiful young lady just won Miss Universe Philippines 2024. She's gorgeous, right? But here's the thing. She won while being half Black and Filipina. This is a step in the greater direction for my Moreno and my Negritos, like, chef kiss. If you're an American wondering what's the big deal, let me just share with you from my experience and observation and from the experience of Morena women that I know here in the Philippines. They really get the hard end of the stick when it comes to beauty standards. All the way until right now, they have never been the ideal beauty standard. As beautiful as they are. Like to this day, I know women here who have to try to convince themselves that they're beautiful and they're extremely beautiful, but they never really believed it, all because of how much they were torn down in their childhood or just in their community about their skin. There's going to be Filipinos in the comment who disagree and pause. This is not the argument of if the Philippines is racist. Pay attention. We're talking about something that is very much known here. If you're a darker skinned Filipina or Filipino, they look at that like it's less fortunate. But what I'm saying is, whether you this dark or 2 shades lighter or my complexion or any complexion, the world, the universe loves melanin. We love melanin. And I, quite honestly, more than half of the Filipinos themselves here in the Philippines are melanated people. And y'all should be proud of whatever you came out the womb looking like. And she's a prime example of it. This got me wondering where the rest of Southeast Asia start recognizing the melanated women here. Because when I'm telling y'all, they have melanated, aka dark-skinned women in Asia. They do, you guys. They do. It's just, will they be put in a position to be seen by the world? But this year it happened. So we just giving flowers. We don't want no bulls in the comments. Show love and swipe up.
Hello guys, today we want to discuss about this girl called Chidimma. I'm here with my friend Evans Rayola. We are going to discuss and have a reaction to this trending video of Chidimma, and then by the end of the video we shall give you our thoughts. We shall also have a deep critical analysis. So without further ado, let's jump into this video.
We are rooting for Chidimma, hoping that she wins, and it's important to highlight these things when they do happen, because as Nima has said, there is a history of xenophobia in South Africa, and when we realize that the community itself should be intentional about changing the view or the perception other people have of South Africa concerning non-South Africans that live in their country. So it's important for us to just support Chidimma and wishing her the best, that hopefully she's able to win the pageant, and we can also celebrate her all the way here. And
so that's the thing. Let her win the pageant and let South Africa celebrate her. When we now celebrate her, she has taken it home.
Mozambique to celebrate her.
Yeah.
The whole of Africa,
that's what Africa was hoping.
Because the goal is that she would going to represent South Africa in the Miss Universe pageant.
And they were calling Chidimma, not Bonang.
But she's African.
My life has been a roller coaster ride, so uncertain and unpredictable. I grew up having insecurities as I was always bullied because of my skin and hair type. My self confidence became poor and I started to become indifferent. But I did not let this shed my own light. I have a strong support system. My family and friends are my backbone. That is why I had a good understanding of accepting my individuality. They made me realize that I am beautiful in my own extraordinary way. And now I am a print, ramp, and commercial model. Chelsea is a woman who looks at herself in the mirror, who embraces herself and knows her worth. Because being beautiful lies on the innate beauty of a human being.
Whether Chidimma Adicina is South African is a question of law. It's not a question of feelings or emotions or prejudice or xenophobia. It is a question of law. And parties to the Government of National Unity all signed a statement of intent in which we agreed to not only abide by the rule of law, but to promote the rule of law. And so the Patriotic Alliance is bound by the law and not by their feelings or by their suspicions or by their prejudice. If she is South African in terms of the law, then she's entitled to contest the Miss South Africa competition, and we shouldn't be tolerating cyberbullying or xenophobia. Let's move on, find out if she is South African by law, and then get behind her as one of the contestants in the Miss South Africa competition.
Your citizenship is determined by where you were born. Yeah. She's South African. It doesn't matter who they are. She's not her parents. She's herself. So why do you want to say she's from Nigeria or she's from Mozambique? She was born here. In America, actually, I don't know how many months, if I'm not wrong, if you are 6 months pregnant or so, they don't allow you to visit. Because they know that once you visit and you stay there and you give birth there, that child is American. Yeah, they know that as long you don't have to be American.
Yeah.
It's born in a hospital there.
Yeah.
Must be certified immediately that this is the child who was born in America. This is an American citizen. So we can't do that. We cannot punish people on the basis of where their parents come from.
Yeah.
So I've not followed the debate. I don't know if she's South African or not. But I would guess the Miss South Africa company would have done the necessary due diligence and come to a conclusion that she's a suitable candidate to contest.
Yeah.
So those are the things that are actually engineered by those hatred amongst African people. Such people should not.
And this is the video we are going to do today with my brother Evans. Evans, what do you know about this girl, Chidimma?
According to what I've seen online, most
Yeah.
especially on TikTok, is that Chidimma has parents who, his dad is Nigerian, then the mom is Zimbabwean, but she was born in South Africa. But, right now, after she won Mr. and Mrs. World South Africa, South Africans have started complaining that she's not South African, that her papers were forged, and that she does not deserve to represent South Africa on a global
Do you think the
South African and Nigerian parents has faced trying moments after social media users questioned her nationality? Chidimma Vanessa Onwe Adetshina is among the top 13 models seeking to represent South Africa at the next Miss World Beauty pageant. Vanessa was born to a South African mother and a Nigerian father in South Africa's Johannesburg city. The model's mother also has Mozambican roots. The law student who was raised in Soweto and later moved to Cape Town says she has spent her whole life in South Africa. She adds that in the Miss South Africa 2024 pageant, public attention was not focused on her until she made it to the top 16. Vanessa recently told Sowetan Live news outlet, "I thought to myself, I'm representing a country, but I don't feel the love from the people I am representing. I even asked myself, is it worth it?" The model said there are several other contestants of mixed heritage in the beauty pageant, but they do not receive the negative attention she gets. Vanessa told True Love magazine, "My father being Nigerian doesn't take away the fact that I am South African." According to Miss South Africa entry requirements, a contestant must be a South African citizen and in possession of a valid South African ID document or passport. If the applicant holds dual citizenship, details of both nationalities must be provided. In her recent interview with Sowetan Live, Vanessa said she has a son with her ex-husband who she divorced in February this year. She said, "We were not compatible because he had this ideology of what an African married woman is. I did not want to be in a position where I cannot go out, but had to clean, cook. That was just not for me." She added that her marriage robbed her of the beauty of being a wife. For now, she is happy. She is realizing her childhood dream of being a successful model, a career that her mother had also wanted to pursue, but circumstances could not allow. Vanessa revealed that her dream to be crowned Miss South Africa started in 2017. On August 10th, the new Miss South Africa will be crowned, and Vanessa hopes she would succeed Natasha Joubert as the crown holder. A South African citizenship can be acquired by birth, descent, or naturalization. A person born to a South African citizen or permanent resident of South Africa is granted citizenship by birth. The same applies to a person adopted by a South African national. Citizenship by descent is granted to people born outside South Africa to South African nationals, while naturalization is for people who have South African spouses or have held a permanent residence permit for at least 5 years. Miss South Africa 2001, Vanessa Carreira, who was born in South Africa, won the title despite having parents.
Something awful has happened in South Africa involving South African model Chidimma Vanessa Onwe Adetshina, who is an entrant and actually has become a contestant on Miss South Africa. She has been attacked mercilessly and awfully bullied and insulted by people saying that she's not really South African. Chidimma was born and raised in South Africa. She was raised in Soweto. She was born at Chris Baragwanath Hospital to a South African mother and a Nigerian father. But many South Africans are now saying, based on her appearance and her name, she's not actually South African, even though she quite literally is when you consider being South African is just, are you a citizen of this country? Are you born here, raised here, have a valid ID? Then you're a citizen. She is a citizen. But a lot of people are pointing out that it's not just xenophobia, the fear of the foreigner, it's specifically Afrophobia happening here, because it's the fear and hatred of African immigrants, even though she's not an immigrant, African people in South Africa, tying into conversations that have been stoked up and led by politicians who've now got lots of votes and got elected, that foreigners are coming in and stealing the jobs and committing all the crimes and all this evil stuff, which is overwhelmingly not supported by facts or data. Here's another Miss South Africa contestant. This is her third time entering Miss South Africa. Her name is Sherry Wang. There have been some weird messages and awful messages about her, but not nearly the same level of mass fury and mass vitriol against her being in Miss South Africa at all. And she's a South African citizen. This outrage is very selective. There's very little actual outrage teetering into xenophobia against Europeans coming here, Americans coming to South Africa. But when it is somebody of African parenting, and this outrage is actually so selective and often inconsistent because, for example, Tendai Mtawarira is one of the most beloved and iconic South African rugby players ever, born and raised in Zimbabwe, but a South African citizen. Roger Federer, we love to claim, because I think one of his parents is South African. He was born in Johannesburg, even though meaningfully he's Swiss. And yet Trevor Noah is playing tennis with him, and he's being treated like one of South Africa's sons. This is the exact problem when politicians take advantage of immigrants to try and scapegoat why many South Africans' lives remain so awful so long after apartheid. They blame foreigners, immigrants, so that they don't have to take responsibility themselves for their own failings, and they outsource the fury to the most vulnerable, who are often immigrants trying to make it in this country. And this is the consequence of all of that behavior.
This is historical and so significant because she is the first Black and Filipino Miss Universe Philippines ever crowned, okay? I feel like Vogue Philippines was like, oh, here's some diversity. And then Miss Universe Philippines was like, bet. Wondering what I'm talking about? I'm talking about none other than Chelsea Manalo from Bulacan just being crowned Miss Universe Philippines, which is historical.
Miss Universe Philippines is going viral. Let's talk about it.
Let's run the clip.
Bulacan! And our first run-up is Kainta.
Boom, Andrew, you've seen the clips, Andrew. Chelsea Manolo. Here is the title. It reads, Miss Universe Philippines crowns first Black Filipino winner. Black Filipino model Chelsea Manolo makes history as she's crowned Miss Universe Philippines. Andrew, some people say she's a front runner to potentially win the whole thing in Mexico.
Woo! Guys, we got to talk about it because we're going to be covering the top 7 comments, because there was a lot of comments from people from the Philippines and people outside of the Philippines, but we're going to analyze the comments. You can let us know what you think in the comments down below. Please.
Let me just say this. Chelsea Manolo is incredibly gorgeous.
She's fine.
She's hot. But
my goodness.
Let's take a look at who she beat out in the field, Andrew. The #1 front runner for the internal Miss Philippines that she won, Andrew, was Atisa Manolo. Oh, interestingly enough,
I don't think she's related. Okay.
Yeah, I guess Manolo's a pretty common last name. #2 was Christy. #3 was Victoria. #4 was Chelsea. And #5 was Chris. And a lot of people were saying, Andrew, that Miss Philippines traditionally have almost looked like Hapa, but more like Filipino mixed with white.
Right. They've always looked kind of mixed, I guess. Even though we know that the Philippines is a very mixed place, that's kind of the sentiment in a lot of these comments. But anyways, basically at this point, Chelsea Manolo, shout out to her, she will be now competing in the larger Miss Universe to represent the Philippines. Yes.
And I think that this really opens up a really interesting discussion about colonialism, colorism. Is it changing now? Because obviously just people are more, I guess, more diverse and more open and getting away from the old days.
Right. I mean, all different shades are representing all different countries now. So, you know, almost every country is to an extent an immigrant country on some level.
More than they were.
Yes.
Andrew, in Japan, they had a Japanese Miss Universe, Ariana Miyamoto.
Yeah. I mean, and let's be honest, guys, a lot of the Miss Universes are oftentimes mixed because, I don't know, either people find them the most beautiful. Maybe they also come from those circles, like their social status or their family comes from those elite circles where they would get into this kind of stuff early on. Or for whatever reason, usually it's white.
I just think that you want, it's messed up to say, but it's like, if you're going to compete in a global competition, sometimes your phenotype, if you just take 100% local native person, it doesn't seem as competitive on a global scale, right? Because everybody's going to be bringing like people from Latin countries that are already ancient mixed for like hundreds of years.
I think it's just weird that whether you're from the Philippines or Latin America, then like the beauty queens, Miss Universe looks similar, usually.
Well, they all look like Barbies.
Yes.
They all look like Barbies, but with a different ethnic twist.
Yeah, they all look 1/3 Barbie, actually.
Or AI generated,
right,
but in a gorgeous way. Crystal K. Andrew was a popular half Black, half Japanese pop star in Japan for a long time. Luo Jing was on China's Next Top Supermodel as a half Black, half Chinese contestant. Apple the App is from the Philippines. Andrew Her is also a half Black, half Filipino. So a lot of people were talking about how this is a break from the classic pattern of more white passing Filipino beauty pageant winners. So yeah, it's a big change because it is true that for Chelsea Manolo and a lot of the global modeling campaigns that she's been in, she plays as a Black model. Like that's she's been in like Black Beauty or like different ad campaigns for different companies.
Right.
So anyway, let's just get into the first comment. It says, "Finally not white. This is a win against colonialism." I mean, I guess, what do you think it is? If there was like, let's just say, for example, let's analyze the last 20 years of Miss Philippines winners, and they've definitely been either lighter skinned Filipinos or half white themselves. Is it a big change for one to be half Black?
I mean, I think it's cool. I think it's cool that, traditionally it's usually the white features that are valued more. But I mean, here, dude, Manolo is fire. Like, I don't know any guy who would, not want to marry her. You know what I mean? So I guess, like, I think it's good. I mean, she has pretty dark skin. So, and I don't know, like, she looks almost like some just African girls I've seen. Like, her eyes are a little bit more Asian, but if you've ever met Black people who end up having a little bit more Asian eyes, they usually get an Asian nickname growing up because they look the most Asian out of their friend group, even though they're full Black. Yes, it's like that.
Well, some Black people were in the comment section wondering if she was Guyanese or Trinidadian or something like that. Like, anyway, moving on to number 2. This is a comment that you saw from more white people. Why do we have to mention that she's Black in the first one? Why can't we just celebrate her achievements without mentioning the racial component?
You mean without mentioning her mix? Yeah, I mean,
the fact that it was a break from the pattern.
Right. I mean, I do think that they are going to give her a boost for breaking the pattern, for the agenda of, pushing more diverse Miss Universes and stuff like that. So I think there is a little bit of that for sure, the political game. But I don't know.
But maybe it's good too, because like if all the winners were all half Spanish or half Italian for like 50 years, I mean, they got to break from it, right?
Right.
Point number 3. Somebody said, how come there's still no full Filipino beauty queens, but I'm happy for? This is more from the Philippines.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if there's no full Filipino, first of all, a lot of Filipinos we know are mixed, but yes, it does seem like a lot of these women right here on this picture, right, of these contestants,
are you talking about the
definitely
contestants?
Mixed. Yeah, they're definitely mixed with something, whether it's Latino, some European blood, or Black, blood. So I'm saying, like, at the end of the day, I guess this is just something that the Philippines would figure out. Like, dude, if you looked at this Miss Philippines list, it looks like some of them appear to be like, some of the girls seem to be Arab, some of them seem to be more Asian, some of them seem Latino.
No, South African. I believe she's South African because she was born in South Africa. Chidimma. Chidimma is a girl who's been making news lately because she won Miss World South Africa, and South Africans are not happy about this because South Africans think she's not one of them.
Yeah, if she could not have won, then these other issues could not be brought right. In the issues they wouldn't come up.
Okay, now there's another good example of this girl called Chelsea. Chelsea is a Black Filipino. She won Miss World Philippines, but the whole of Philippines was happy to have her, and they were so excited that a Black Filipino was able to announce the name of Philippines to the global stage. And me seeing an African going against an African, while a Filipino accepting somebody who has an African blood, makes me think that the issue of Chidimma is such, it has a very deep root. It's not just, let's not look at it on the surface level that she won and she's not liked. I'm gonna be honest, brother. South Africans have had a long history of